Is there anything louder than the silence of a breaking heart? Victoria Vance stood behind the frosted glass of the private maternity ward, her hand trembling over her own 7-month baby bump. Inside the man she had loved for 10 years, her husband Grant was gently rocking a newborn baby. But it wasn't hers. And the woman smiling up at him from the hospital bed wasn't Victoria. It was his secretary. In that shattering moment, Victoria didn't scream. She didn't storm in. She simply turned around and walked away. Grant thought he was the king of the empire, but he was about to learn that the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. Victoria adjusted the silk collar of her maternity dress, staring at her reflection in the foyer mirror of their sprawling penthouse. She looked tired. At 7 months pregnant, the glow everyone promised had been replaced by a persistent exhaustion that settled deep in her bones. But it wasn't just the pregnancy, it was the silence in the house, and it was 8:00 p.m. on a Friday. Grant was late again. "He's just working hard for us, Vicky," she whispered to herself, repeating the mantra she had clung to for the last 6 months. Grant Sterling was the face of Sterling & Vance, the city's premier architectural firm. He was charismatic, handsome, and fiercely ambitious. When they married 5 years ago, he had been a struggling junior architect with big dreams and an empty bank account. Victoria, preferring to stay out of the spotlight after inheriting her late father's massive estate, had quietly funded his rise. She had bought the firm, rebranded it, and installed Grant as the CEO. To the world, Grant was the genius visionary. To the world, Victoria was just the lucky socialite wife who stayed home. She preferred it that way. She hated the prying eyes of the press. She trusted Grant to handle the business while she prepared for their family. The sound of the front door unlocking snapped her out of her reverie. Grant walked in, tossing his keys into the crystal bowl. He smelled of expensive scotch and a perfume that was too floral to be office air freshener. "You're home," Victoria said, forcing a smile. She waddled slightly as she moved to greet him. "Dinner is cold, but I can reheat the roast." Grant didn't even look at her. He loosened his tie, his expression tight with annoyance. "Don't bother. I ate at a client meeting. I'm exhausted, Victoria. I'm going straight to bed." He brushed past her, dodging her attempt to kiss his cheek. "Grant," she called out softly. "Dr. Eris said the baby is in the perfect position today. I have the ultrasound pictures if you want to see." "Not tonight, Victoria." Grant snapped, spinning around. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth they once held. "I am trying to run a multi-million-dollar company. I don't have time to coo over blurry black and white photos every single day. Do you have any idea of the pressure I'm under?" Victoria recoiled as if slapped. "I own the company too, Grant. I know exactly what the pressure is like." Grant let out a harsh, mocking laugh. You own a piece of paper, Victoria. I am the one bringing in the contracts. I am the one the city respects. You just sit here in this house I pay for and nest." He turned and marched up the stairs, leaving Victoria standing alone in the grand foyer. She placed a protective hand over her belly. "He didn't mean it," she whispered to the unborn child. "Daddy is just stressed." But deep down, the uneasy feeling in her gut wasn't indigestion. It was intuition. The next morning, Grant left before sunrise. He claimed he had a weekend conference in Aspen with potential investors. He packed a bag, took his passport, and kissed her forehead with a mechanical detachment that chilled her blood. "Don't wait up on Sunday," he said. "I might go straight to the office." Victoria watched his sleek black sedan disappear down the driveway. She felt a sudden overwhelming urge to verify his flight. She never checked up on him. She wasn't that kind of wife, but the perfume smell from the night before lingered in her memory. She opened her laptop and logged into their shared cloud account. She checked the flight itineraries. There was no flight to Aspen. There was, however, a recurring charge on the company credit card for a private suite at St. Jude's Medical Center, specifically in the VIP maternity wing. Victoria frowned. Why would Grant be paying for a maternity suite? Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "He's not in Aspen. He's at St. Jude's. Room 404. Come see who he's really building a family with." Her heart hammered against her ribs. It had to be a mistake, a prank. But the credit card statement stared back at her unblinking and factual. Victoria grabbed her coat. She didn't call the driver. She called an Uber. She needed to be invisible. The VIP wing of St. Jude's was quieter than a library. The floors were marble and the air smelled of lavender rather than antiseptic. Victoria kept her head down, her oversized sunglasses hiding her red-rimmed eyes. She wore a simple beige trench coat that concealed her baby bump. She found room 404 at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. Victoria stopped. Her breath hitched in her throat. She could hear voices. "She's beautiful, Grant. She has your nose." A woman's voice, high-pitched, cloying. "She's perfect," Grant's voice replied. It was soft, filled with an adoration Victoria hadn't heard directed at her in years. "My little princess." Victoria inched closer to the gap in the door. Inside, the room was filled with balloons and flowers. In the hospital bed sat Tiffany, Grant's personal assistant, a woman Victoria had invited to dinner, a woman Victoria had bought Christmas gifts for. Tiffany looked radiant, holding a glass of sparkling cider. But it was Grant who commanded Victoria's attention. He was sitting in the armchair next to the bed, holding a swaddled infant. He was rocking the baby gently, his face glowing with pride. "When are you going to tell her?" Tiffany asked, taking a sip of her drink. "You promised Grant. Once the baby was born, you'd leave the cow." Victoria's hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. The cow. Grant sighed, still looking at the baby. "I have to time it right, Tiff. Victoria is emotional. And her name is on the preliminary deeds. If I leave her now, it gets messy. I need to get her to sign over the controlling shares of the firm first. I have the papers drawn up. I'm going to tell her it's for tax purposes before her baby comes." "And the baby?" Tiffany asked, pouting. "I don't want her brat around our daughter." "Don't worry," Grant scoffed. "Once I have the shares, I'll file for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. I'll give her the house to keep her quiet. She can raise her kid alone. I want a fresh start, with you, and with real heirs. Not a child from a woman who let herself go the moment she got a ring." Tears streamed down Victoria's face, hot and fast. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to rob her. He was planning to steal the company her father built, the legacy she had entrusted to him, and leave her and their child with nothing but a house she didn't want. He was holding another woman's baby while hers was kicking inside her, ignored and unwanted. For a moment, rage flared so hot she wanted to kick the door open. She wanted to scream, to throw the vase of flowers at his head, to expose him right there in front of the nurses. But then she looked at Grant's smug face. She saw the calculation in his eyes. If she screamed now, she was just the hysterical pregnant wife. He would spin it. He would manipulate the narrative. He would say she was crazy, hormonal. He would fight her for the assets, and he knew the company's accounts better than she did right now. No, she thought, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Anger is cheap. Revenge is expensive. She took a photo through the crack of the door, a clear shot of Grant holding the baby with Tiffany smiling in the background. Then she recorded 10 seconds of their conversation about the shares. She stepped back, her heels silent on the plush carpet. She turned around and walked away. As she reached the elevator, she dialed a number she hadn't called in 5 years. "Harrison," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength with every word. "Victoria," the deep, gravelly voice of her father's old lawyer answered. "Is everything all right?" "No," she said, stepping into the elevator and pressing the button for the lobby. "Grant is trying to steal the firm. He has a mistress and a secret child. I need you to freeze everything." And Harrison, "Yes, Victoria. I want to invoke Clause 14 of the original partnership agreement, the bad faith clause, and get the private investigators ready. I want to know what he had for breakfast 3 years ago. I want to destroy him." Victoria returned to the empty house. It no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage set for a play that had just been canceled. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried up in the car ride home, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. She went into Grant's home office. He was sloppy. He thought she was stupid, so he barely hid his tracks. She found the tax documents he planned to have her sign in his briefcase. She read them over. It was a transfer of ownership agreement disguised amidst pages of legal jargon. If she signed this, she would be signing away 40% of her shares to him for management stability, giving him majority control. She took photos of the documents. Then she put them back exactly as she found them. She spent the weekend packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Her jewelry, her personal documents, the hard drives with the original company and corporation papers. She moved them into a secure storage unit on the other side of town. On Sunday evening, Grant returned. He acted exhausted. Aspen was a nightmare. He lied, rubbing his temples. Investors are sharks, Victoria. You're lucky you don't have to deal with them. Victoria sat on the sofa reading a book. She didn't look up. Did you close the deal? Almost, he said, loosening his tie. I just need to finalize some internal structuring. Actually, that reminds me. I have some papers for you to sign tomorrow, just standard tax stuff for the upcoming fiscal year. Since the baby is coming, we need to protect our assets. Victoria finally looked up. She studied his face. He looked so sincere. It was terrifying how good of a liar he was. Of course, Grant, she said, her voice smooth. Whatever is best for the family. Grant smiled, relieved. That's my girl. I'll have them on the kitchen counter in the morning. Monday morning came. The papers were there next to a fresh pot of coffee Grant had brewed. A peace offering. Victoria picked up the pen. Grant watched her, literally holding his breath. He was leaning against the counter, trying to look casual, but his knuckles were white as he gripped his mug. Victoria hovered the pen over the signature line. Then she stopped. Oh, I almost forgot, she said, putting the pen down. What? Grant asked, his voice sharp. What is it? My hand is so cramped, she lied. Pregnancy carpal tunnel. And honestly, Grant, I promised my father I would never sign legal documents without Harrison looking at them. It's superstition. Grant's face darkened. Harrison is a dinosaur, Victoria. He doesn't understand modern corporate structure. He'll take weeks to review this. We need it done today. Why the rush? Victoria asked innocently. Is the IRS knocking on the door? No, but... Grant stammered, realizing he was pushing too hard. He forced a laugh. I just want to get it off our plate before the baby comes. Don't you trust me? Victoria looked him dead in the eye. I trust you exactly as much as you deserve, Grant. The double meaning flew right over his head. Fine, Grant snapped, snatching the papers. I'll explain it to you tonight, but this needs to be signed. We'll see, she said. Grant stormed out to go to the office. As soon as he was gone, Victoria made her move. She didn't go to the office. She went to the bank. With Harrison's help, she accessed the joint accounts. Because the initial capital was hers, and the accounts were set up under her family trust's umbrella, she had primary authority. She didn't empty them, that would look like theft. Instead, she triggered a security freeze. She flagged all outgoing transactions over $500 as suspicious activity, requiring dual biometric authorization. Then she went to the firm's headquarters. She hadn't stepped foot in Sterling and Vance in 2 years. The receptionist, a new girl named Chloe, who looked suspiciously like Tiffany, barely looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see the CFO, Victoria said. Do you have an appointment? I don't need one. I'm Victoria Vance. The girl blinked. The name meant nothing to her. Mr. Sterling is in a meeting. You can't just... I didn't ask for Mr. Sterling. I asked for the CFO, Mr. Henderson. Victoria walked past the desk. Security stepped forward, but the head of security, an older man named Jerry, who had worked for Victoria's father, recognized her immediately. Miss Victoria, Jerry beamed, stepping in front of the new guard. "It's been too long." "Hello, Jerry." She smiled warmly. "I need access to the executive financial server room, and I need you to make sure no one tells Grant I'm here." Jerry winked. "My radio is broken. Haven't seen a soul." Victoria spent 3 hours with the CFO, a nervous man who had been bullied into submission by Grant. When Victoria revealed she knew about the consulting fees being paid to a shell company registered in Tiffany's name, Henderson broke down. "He made me do it, Mrs. Sterling. He said he'd fire me." "I'm not Mrs. Sterling today, Mr. Henderson. I'm Ms. Vance, and you're going to help me or you're going to prison for embezzlement." By the time Victoria left the building, she had copies of every illicit transaction Grant had made in the last 2 years. He had been siphoning company money to buy Tiffany a condo, a car, and pay for the private maternity ward. She had the ammunition. Now she just needed the battlefield. That night she didn't go home. She checked into the Four Seasons under her maiden name. At 7:00 p.m., her phone blew up. "Grant." "Where are you?" "Dinner is on the table." "Grant, pick up the phone." "Victoria." "Grant, why are my credit cards declined?" "I'm at a client dinner and I look like an idiot." "Grant, Victoria." She watched the messages roll in, sipping a chamomile tea in her robe. She typed one reply. "Victoria, I'm at the place where honesty lives. You should try to find it. Don't wait up." She turned off her phone. The real game was about to begin. Grant Sterling was not a man accustomed to being told no. His entire life, from his charm-filled college days to his rapid ascent in the architectural world, had been a series of open doors. So when the card terminal at Le Jardin, the city's most pretentious French restaurant, flashed "declined" for the 3rd time in front of 2 prospective clients, Grant felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in years: panic. He had laughed it off, of course. "Bank errors," he had quipped, flashing his winning smile while sweating through his custom shirt. He had been forced to ask the clients to cover the bill, promising to reimburse them 3-fold. It was humiliating. It was amateur. Now standing in the marble kitchen of his empty penthouse on Tuesday morning, Grant was furious. "Pick up the phone, Victoria!" he shouted at the voicemail for the 20th time. He slammed his cell phone onto the granite island. The house was too quiet. He had returned late the previous night to find the master bedroom untouched. The bed was made with military precision. The closet, usually overflowing with Victoria's maternity clothes and soft cashmere wraps, looked sparse. He had checked the safe. Her jewelry was gone. "She's throwing a tantrum," Grant muttered to himself, pacing the floor. He ran a hand through his hair. "She's hormonal. She's upset because I missed dinner on Friday. That's all it is." He refused to believe anything else. The alternative that she knew was impossible. He had been careful. Tiffany had been discreet. The baby was a secret buried under layers of privacy laws and cash payments. His phone buzzed. It was Tiffany. "Tiffany. The realtor just called. The deposit for the condo bounced, Grant. They're threatening to put it back on the market. Fix this. Now." Grant groaned. He texted back, handling it. "Just a banking glitch. Don't worry, babe." He dialed the private banking line for the firm. "This is Grant Sterling. My cards are frozen. Unfreeze them immediately." "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling." The voice on the other end was cool, professional, and detached. "The freeze was initiated by the primary account holder due to suspected fraudulent activity. We cannot lift it without her biometric authorization in person." "I am the CEO of the company," Grant roared. "I am her husband." "Ms. Vance is the primary account holder, sir. Your authorization level is secondary. Have a nice day." The line went dead. Grant stared at the phone. Secondary. The word echoed in his head like a gunshot. For 5 years, Victoria had let him play the king. She had signed whatever he put in front of her, nodded at his business strategies, and stayed in the background. He had forgotten, truly forgotten, that technically she held the leash. He needed those shares. He needed her to sign the transfer agreement immediately. Once he had the 40%, he would have majority control. He could fire the bank. He could fire her. He needed to find her. He called her friends. None of them had seen her. He called her obstetrician. The receptionist said, "Mrs. Sterling has canceled her remaining appointments with us." That stopped Grant cold. Canceled her appointments. She was 7 months pregnant. Where would she go? A terrible thought occurred to him. He rushed to his home office and booted up his computer. He logged into the firm's internal server to check his email looking for a distraction. An email from the CFO Henderson popped up. Subject urgent. Audit inquiry. Mr. Sterling, the external auditors are asking for receipts regarding the consulting fees to T-Bone LLC. They are in the conference room. Please advise. Grant's blood ran cold. T-Bone LLC was the shell company he used to funnel money to Tiffany. External auditors. He hadn't hired auditors. He grabbed his keys. He didn't have access to his accounts, but he had a stash of emergency cash in the office safe. He needed to get to the firm, destroy the paper trail, and find his wife before she did something stupid. Little did he know Victoria wasn't doing something stupid. She was doing something brilliant. Across town, Victoria sat in a leather armchair in the library of Harrison's law firm. The room smelled of old paper and mahogany. "You look tired, Victoria," Harrison said gently, sliding a glass of water across the desk. "But you also look determined." "I'm done being tired, Harrison," Victoria said, her hand resting on her stomach. Her baby kicked a strong, reassuring thud against her ribs. "Grant thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm just a vessel for his heirs and a bank account for his ego. He forgot that I was the one who taught him how to read a blueprint." Harrison smiled grimly. "We have the forensic accounting report. It's damning. He's misappropriated over $2 million in company funds for personal use. The condo, the car, the hospital bills. It's all there. But Victoria, if we go to court with this, the scandal could hurt the firm's stock price. The public loves Grant. They think he's the genius behind the skyline." "I know," Victoria said. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city her father had helped build. "That's why we're not going to court. Not yet." "What do you have in mind?" Victoria turned back, a cold fire in her eyes. Grant scheduled a board meeting for Friday to push through his new expansion plan. He wants to use that meeting to dazzle the board and get them to vote for a restructuring that dilutes my shares. He's walking into a trap, Harrison realized. "No," Victoria corrected him. "He's walking into an execution. I'm going to that meeting, Harrison. And I want you to be there. But not as my lawyer." "As what?" "As the executioner." By Thursday, Grant was a wreck. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. He had been living off office coffee and adrenaline. He had managed to stall the auditors by claiming the files were archived off-site, but he knew he was running out of time. He still hadn't found Victoria. Then at 2:00 p.m., his secretary, the new one since Tiffany was on maternity leave, buzzed him. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling is on line 1. Grant nearly knocked his chair over, grabbing the phone. "Victoria? Where the hell are you?" "Hello, Grant." Her voice was calm, almost serene. It was the voice of the woman he had married, not the ghost who had fled. "I'm sorry to worry you. I needed some space. The pregnancy, the hormones. I just felt overwhelmed." Grant exhaled, his shoulders sagging. She was apologizing. She was buying the narrative. Thank God. "I was worried sick, Vicky." He lied smoothly, his confidence returning instantly. "I've been going out of my mind. Where are you?" "I'm at a spa resort in the countryside," she said. "I needed to clear my head, but I'm coming back tomorrow. I know how important the board meeting is for you." "The meeting?" Grant said, his eyes narrowing. "Right. You're coming." "Of course. I want to support you." "And Grant, about those papers you wanted me to sign." "Yes." Grant held his breath. I have them with me. I read them over. You're right. We need to protect the assets. I'll sign them and bring them to the meeting. We can make it official in front of the board. Show a united front. Grant pumped his fist in the air silently. It was perfect. Better than perfect. Signing the transfer in front of the board would legitimize his takeover completely. That sounds wonderful, honey, Grant purred. I'll see you there at 10:00 a.m. I love you. See you, Grant? The line clicked dead. Victoria lowered the phone and looked at her reflection in the hotel mirror. She wasn't at a spa. She was 10 blocks away. I love you too, she whispered to the empty room. That's why this has to hurt. Friday morning arrived with a thunderstorm that rattled the windows of the Sterling & Vance skyscraper. Grant arrived early dressed in his best charcoal suit. He felt invincible. He had texted Tiffany the good news. Grant. She's signing today. Once the meeting is over, I'm filing the papers. We'll be celebrating by tonight. Tiffany, good. Bring champagne. The baby has been screaming all night. Grant frowned at the text but dismissed it. He walked into the boardroom. The long mahogany table was polished to a shine. The board of directors was already assembling. There was Arthur Penhaligon, a 70-year-old real estate mogul who had been her father's golfing buddy. There was Beatrice Cole, a sharp-eyed venture capitalist who never smiled. And there were 3 younger members Grant had brought on recently, his yes men. Grant? Arthur nodded, tapping his pen. We hear there's a big announcement today. Huge, Arthur. Grant beamed, taking his seat at the head of the table. We are restructuring for the future. Sterling & Vance is about to become a global empire. And Victoria? Beatrice asked, looking over her spectacles. Is she joining us? We haven't seen her in months. She'll be here, Grant assured them. She's fully on board with the new direction. At 10:05 a.m. the double doors opened. Grant stood up, a smile plastered on his face, expecting to see Victoria in one of her flowy, apologetic maternity dresses. Instead, the room went silent. Victoria walked in. She was wearing a tailored black maternity suit that looked like armor. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She wore diamond studs that caught the light. She didn't look tired. She looked dangerous. Behind her walked Harrison carrying a thick leather briefcase. And behind him walked Henderson, the CFO who looked like he was walking to the gallows. Victoria. Grant faltered, his smile wavering. You look stunning, but why is the lawyer here? Victoria didn't look at him. She walked to the opposite end of the table, the seat reserved for the chairman, her father's seat. Good morning, everyone, she said, her voice clear and projecting to the back of the room. She remained standing. Please don't get up. Vicky, honey. Grant chuckled nervously, walking toward her. That's the chairman's seat. You can sit next to me. Victoria turned her head slowly and looked at him. Her eyes were like ice. Sit down, Grant. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Grant froze. The board members exchanged glances. Arthur Penhaligon sat up straighter. We have a lot to cover, Victoria said, placing her hands on the table. But first, Grant mentioned some papers I needed to sign. Grant scrambled to recover the situation. Yes, right here. He grabbed the folder from his side of the table and slid it toward her. Just the asset protection restructuring, like we discussed. Victoria opened the folder. She looked at the document. Transfer of 40% voting rights to Grant Sterling. She picked up a pen. Grant's heart hammered against his ribs. Do it. Just do it. Victoria held the pen up. You told the board that this transfer is to stabilize the company management, correct, Grant? Absolutely. Grant nodded to the room. Victoria wants to focus on the baby. I'm stepping up to handle the burden. The burden, Victoria repeated. She smiled a cold, terrifying smile. It's funny you use that word. She ripped the document in half. The sound of tearing paper was deafening in the silent room. Grant's jaw dropped. Victoria, what are you doing? I'm declining your offer, she said, tossing the pieces onto the floor. And I'm invoking my right as the majority shareholder to call for an immediate vote of no confidence in the CEO. Grant laughed. It was a hysterical, disbelief-filled sound. You can't do that. You don't have the grounds, and even if you did, the board supports me. He looked at his yes men. Right. They looked away. Oh, I have grounds, Victoria said softly. Harrison. Harrison stepped forward and placed a thumb drive into the room's smart projector system. What is this? Grant demanded, his face flushing red. This is highly irregular. Sit down, Grant, Arthur Penhaligon barked. The old man's voice was thunderous. Grant sat. The projector screen lowered. Grounds for dismissal. Victoria narrated, her voice steady. Embezzlement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and moral turpitude. The screen flickered to life. The first image that appeared on the massive 4K screen was not a spreadsheet. It was a photograph. It was the photo Victoria had taken through the crack of the hospital door. High resolution. Undeniable. Grant sitting in the hospital chair, gazing adoringly at the newborn in his arms. In the background, Tiffany, unmistakable even in a hospital gown, raising a glass of cider. A gasp rippled through the room. Beatrice Cole covered her mouth. Isn't that your secretary? Arthur asked, squinting at the screen. That is Tiffany Miller, Victoria confirmed, who is currently on the payroll as a senior consultant for a company called T-Bone LLC. Grant, would you like to explain to the board why the company has paid T-Bone LLC $250,000 in the last 6 months? Grant was shaking. He stood up, knocking his chair back. This is personal. This is a private matter. Victoria is trying to humiliate me because she's jealous. This has nothing to do with the company. It has everything to do with the company, Victoria countered, her voice rising. Because you paid for that hospital suite with the corporate Amex. You paid for her condo with the firm's development fund. Harrison clicked a button. The screen changed. Now it displayed bank statements. Highlighted in red were transfers: St. Jude's Medical, VIP Wing, Luxury Motors, Tiffany Miller Consulting. You stole from us, Beatrice Cole said, her voice dripping with disgust. You stole from the partners. I was going to pay it back. Grant screamed, the veins in his neck bulging. It was a loan I made this company. I brought in the contracts. I am Sterling and Vance. Actually, Victoria said, signaling Harrison again. You're not. The screen changed to a legal document. It was the original incorporation charter of the firm, dated 30 years ago, signed by Victoria's father. You see, Victoria addressed the board, ignoring Grant. When my father died, he left the firm to me. When Grant and I married, I allowed him to run it. I let him put his name on the door. I let him think he was a partner. She turned to look at Grant, who was now sweating profusely, loosening his tie. But Grant never read the fine print of the prenuptial agreement nor the company charter. He assumed that because we were married, he owned half of what I owned. He assumed that Sterling and Vance was a 50-50 partnership. She took a step closer to him. But the firm is structured as a limited liability partnership with a tiered share system. Class A shares hold voting power. Class B shares are purely for dividends. Grant holds 49% of the Class B shares. She paused for effect. I own 100% of the Class A shares. I own 90% of the total equity of this firm. Grant Sterling doesn't own a single brick of this building. He is an employee, an at-will employee. The silence in the room was absolute. Grant looked like he had been punched in the gut. He staggered back against the wall. You lied to me, he whispered. You let me build this up, thinking it was mine. I let you build it up because I loved you, Victoria said, her voice finally cracking with the weight of the betrayal. I wanted us to build it together. I didn't care about the shares. I didn't care about the titles. I trusted you. She gestured to the screen where the picture of him holding the other baby still loomed. But then you decided to build a different life, with my money. She turned back to the board. I move for the immediate termination of Grant Sterling as CEO effective immediately. I also move for the commencement of criminal proceedings for embezzlement and fraud. All in favor? Arthur Penhaligon's hand shot up. Aye. Beatrice Cole. Aye. Even the three yes men, seeing the ship sinking and the captain burning slowly, raised their hands. Aye. The motion carries, Victoria said. She looked at Jerry, the head of security, who was standing by the door with two uniformed guards. Jerry, Victoria said, please escort Mr. Sterling out of the building. He is to take nothing, no laptop, no phone, no files. Check his pockets. Jerry stepped forward, his face grim. He had never liked Grant. Yes, Miss Vance, with pleasure. Grant looked around the room. He saw no sympathy. He saw only judgment. His empire had crumbled in less than 10 minutes. You can't do this to me, Grant snarled, his eyes wild. I am the father of your child. Victoria placed a hand on her belly. She looked at him with a pity that hurt more than the anger. No, Grant, you made your choice. You're the father of Tiffany's child. My child. My child has a mother who owns a kingdom, and that's enough. Jerry grabbed Grant's arm. Let's go, sir. Don't make a scene. Get your hands off me, Grant shouted, shaking him off. He straightened his jacket, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. He glared at Victoria. You think you've won? The company is nothing without me. The clients love me. I'll start my own firm. I'll crush you, and I'll take half your money in the divorce. Victoria watched him walk to the door. Grant, she called out one last time. He stopped, hand on the door handle, looking back with a sneer. You really should have read the prenup, she said softly. The infidelity clause voids all spousal support. You're leaving this marriage exactly how you entered it. Broke. Grant's face went white. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. He turned and fled the room, Jerry close on his heels. As the door closed, Victoria let out a long, shaky breath. She sat down in the chairman's chair. Her legs were trembling. Arthur Penhaligon stood up and walked over to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Your father would have been proud, Victoria, he said quietly. He always said you were the tough one. Victoria looked up at the old man and smiled through tears she finally allowed to fall. I'm not tough, Arthur, she said. I'm just a mother, protecting her young. But the drama wasn't over. Grant Sterling was not a man who went down quietly, and Tiffany Miller was not a woman who gave up her meal ticket without a fight. As Victoria left the building an hour later, exhausted but victorious, her phone rang. It wasn't Grant. It was a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Sterling, a voice said. This is the emergency room at St. Jude's. Your husband, or ex-husband, has just been admitted. Victoria's heart stopped. What happened? He crashed his car, the nurse said. He was driving at high speed. He kept screaming that he had to fix it. But Mrs. Sterling, there was a passenger. Victoria gripped the phone. Who? A woman, Tiffany Miller. And there was a car seat in the back. The drive to St. Jude's Medical Center was a blur of red taillights and pouring rain. Victoria sat in the back of her town car, her hands resting protectively on her stomach. She felt a strange detachment, a numbness that shielded her from the horror of the news. Grant, Tiffany, the baby. The trio that had destroyed her marriage was now wreckage on the side of the interstate. When she arrived at the emergency room, the scene was chaotic. Police officers were interviewing nurses. A gurney was being rushed down the hall. Mrs. Sterling. A doctor approached her. He looked exhausted. I'm Dr. Evans. Thank you for coming so quickly. Is he alive? Victoria asked. Her voice was steady, devoid of the panic a wife should feel. He is, Dr. Evans said. He's in surgery now. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a severe concussion. We're doing everything we can. But, Mrs. Sterling, the police need to speak with you. Victoria nodded. She turned to see two officers approaching. Behind them, sitting on a waiting room chair with a bandaged head and a hysterical expression, was Tiffany. Tiffany looked up and saw Victoria. The transformation was instantaneous. The mistress's face twisted from fear to venomous rage. "You!" Tiffany shrieked, struggling to stand up. "You did this! You killed him!" The lobby went silent. Victoria didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her trench coat and walked toward Tiffany, stopping 5 feet away. "Sit down, Tiffany," Victoria said calmly. "You're making a scene." "He was distraught," Tiffany screamed, tears streaking her mascara. "He called me after the meeting. He said you ruined him. He said you took everything. He was driving like a madman because he was trying to get us away from you. If he dies, it's on your hands." Victoria looked at the younger woman. She saw the fear behind the anger. Tiffany wasn't mourning Grant. She was mourning the ATM that had just been smashed. "He was driving like a madman," Victoria corrected her, "because he is a narcissist who couldn't handle the consequences of his own actions. And you, Tiffany, were in the car because you knew the money tap had been turned off." "I love him," Tiffany spat. "Do you?" Victoria asked. "Or do you love the condo on 5th Street, the one that's currently in foreclosure? Do you love the Audi you crashed, the one reported stolen an hour ago because the company lease was terminated?" Tiffany's mouth opened and closed. She had no comeback. "Where is the baby?" Victoria asked, her voice softening for the first time. "She's in observation," Tiffany mumbled, looking away. The car seat saved her, not a scratch. Victoria let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank God for that. She's the only innocent person in this entire mess." A police officer stepped between them. "Mrs. Sterling, we need a statement regarding the vehicle." "It's not Mrs. Sterling anymore," Victoria said, turning her back on Tiffany. "It's Ms. Vance. And yes, officer. Let's talk about the stolen vehicle." The bitter harvest. 3 days passed. Grant survived the surgery, but his leg was shattered and his career was effectively over. The news of his embezzlement had leaked to the press, likely thanks to Arthur Penhaligon, and Sterling and Vance stocks actually rose after Victoria's decisive action in the boardroom. The market loved a strong leader. Victoria didn't visit Grant until he was moved out of the ICU. She needed to close the book. She walked into his private room. He looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, his legs suspended in a sling. His face was bruised purple and yellow. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "Vicky," he croaked, "you came." Victoria stood at the foot of the bed. She didn't sit. "I brought the papers, Grant," she said, pulling a file from her bag. "Not the transfer papers, the divorce papers." Grant winced. "Can't we talk about this? I almost died, Victoria. Doesn't that mean anything? It gave me perspective. I realized I made a mistake. I love you. We can fix this. I can earn your trust back." Victoria stared at him, marveling at his delusion. He genuinely believed he could charm his way out of this. He thought a few bruises and a sob story would erase the embezzlement, the affair, and the secret family. "Grant," she said, her voice tired, "you are facing 10 to 15 years in prison for corporate fraud and embezzlement. Harrison has already handed the files to the district attorney." Grant's face went pale. "You wouldn't let the mother of your child see her father in prison?" "I won't," Victoria agreed. "Because you aren't going to be her father. I'm petitioning for full custody, no visitation, and given your criminal record and financial instability, the judge will grant it." "I have a daughter," Grant shouted, gesturing vaguely to the hallway. "Tiffany's baby. I have a family." "Ah, yes," Victoria said. She pulled another piece of paper from her file. "About that." She walked to the side of the bed and placed the document on his chest. "What is this?" Grant asked, struggling to lift his head. "While the baby was in observation," Victoria explained, "the doctors had to run blood tests to check for internal trauma. They needed parental blood types for potential transfusions. Tiffany is type O." You are type A. Grant looked confused. So, the baby is type B, Grant. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor, which was speeding up rapidly. That's impossible, Grant whispered. That's a mistake. We ran a DNA test to be sure, Victoria said ruthlessly. It's not a mistake. You aren't the father, Grant. Tiffany was sleeping with her personal trainer the entire time. She pinned the baby on you because she knew you were a rich mark. Grant stared at the ceiling. His mouth hung open. The realization crashed over him heavier than the car accident. He had thrown away the love of a brilliant, loyal woman. He had embezzled millions. He had destroyed his reputation. He had lost his company. He was going to prison. And he had done it all for a woman who didn't love him and a child that wasn't even his. No, he wheezed, tears leaking from his eyes. No, no, no. Tiffany has already been discharged, Victoria added, delivering the final blow. She skipped town this morning. She knows the money is gone. You'll never see her again. Grant began to sob. It was a broken, ugly sound. He reached out his hand toward Victoria. Vicky, please. Please help me. I have nothing. I have no one. Victoria looked at his hand. She remembered how that hand used to hold hers. She remembered how that hand had signed the checks to his mistress. She remembered how that hand had held a baby that wasn't hers while she watched from the hallway. She didn't take it. You have exactly what you built, Grant, she said. Nothing. She turned and walked to the door. Victoria, he screamed, the desperation echoing off the sterile walls. Don't leave me here. I'm your husband. She stopped at the door, her hand on the handle. She looked back over her shoulder, her silhouette framed by the hallway light. You were my investment, she said coldly, and I'm cutting my losses. She walked out and the door clicked shut, sealing him in his silence. The Queen's Gambit. 6 months later, the boardroom of Sterling and Vance, now rebranded simply as the Vance Group, was buzzing with activity. The quarterly earnings report was projected on the screen. Profits were up 200%. Victoria sat at the head of the table. In a bassinet next to her sat her 2-month-old son, William. He was cooing softly, playing with a plush toy. Excellent work on the Tokyo contract, Beatrice, Victoria said, smiling at the board member. I think we're ready to expand into the European market. Agreed, Beatrice said, smiling at the baby. William seems to approve too. The meeting adjourned and the board members filed out, stopping to wave at the baby. They respected Victoria, not because she was a woman or a mother or a wife, but because she was a shark who had defended her company from the inside out. Harrison lingered behind. I heard from the prison today, he said quietly. Victoria didn't look up from packing her papers. And Grant is not doing well. He's working in the laundry. He tries to send letters, but I return them unopened as instructed. Victoria paused. She looked at little William, who had Grant's eyes but her spirit. Good, she said. Keep it that way. He asked for a photo of the boy, Harrison added gently. Victoria picked up William, holding him close. She kissed the top of his head, inhaling the scent of baby powder and hope. He chose his family, Harrison. He chose a lie. He doesn't get to enjoy the truth. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Down below, the city was moving alive and vibrant. Somewhere out there, Tiffany was likely looking for her next victim. Somewhere in a cell, Grant was scrubbing sheets, haunted by the memory of the life he threw away. But up here in the clouds, Victoria Vance was exactly where she belonged. She was the owner. She was the mother. She was the survivor. She looked at her reflection in the glass. She didn't look tired anymore. She looked like a queen who had burned the castle down just to kill the rats and built a palace from the ashes. Ready to go home, Will, she whispered to her son. She turned off the lights in the boardroom, leaving the past in the dark, and stepped into the light of her future. What a roller coaster of emotions. Victoria's story is a powerful reminder that silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it's the calm before the tsunami. Grant mistook his wife's kindness for blindness, and his arrogance cost him absolutely everything: his freedom, his reputation, and his family. It's a classic tale of karma. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's just artificial turf painted over a sinkhole. Victoria proved that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who knows everything but says nothing until the timing is perfect. She didn't just win. She redefined the game. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, revenge, and sweet justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a story. What would you have done in Victoria's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.